your cause for democracy.
It's the people's right to...
Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of the hour. Australia begins mourning after a father and son carry out a deadly shooting at a Jewish celebration at Sydney's Bondi Beach, killing 16 people, including the shooter. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese calls it a dark moment for our nation as authorities describe the attack as targeted anti-Semitic violence. Police say the man detained as a person of interest in the deadly shooting at Brown University will be released from custody. Authorities say 2 students are killed and 9 others injured in Saturday's attack, with the investigation continuing. Hong Kong's High Court finds pro-democracy media tycoon Jimmy Lai guilty of sedition and collusion with foreign forces under a China-imposed security law. The verdict, which could carry a life sentence, draws international criticism amid concerns over Hong Kong's rule of law. Chile elects far-right candidate Jose Antonio Cast as president with more than 58% of the vote after a campaign focused on security and crime. The result marks the country's sharpest shift to the right since the end of military rule, as Cast defeats left-wing rival Janet Jara. Security experts say Ukraine's offer to drop its NATO bid is unlikely to significantly shift peace talks with Russia. President Volodymyr Zelensky says security guarantees from the US and Europe would serve as a compromise in place of NATO membership. Syria says it arrests 5 suspects linked to a shooting in Palmyra that kills 2 US soldiers and a civilian interpreter. Authorities say the attacker, who is shot dead, is a member of the security forces suspected of sympathizing with Islamic State. Nvidia says it is considering boosting production of its H200 AI chips after demand from Chinese tech companies exceeds current supply. The move follows a US decision to allow H200 exports to China with a 25% fee, though Beijing has yet to approve the purchases. Britain says it will begin regulating crypto assets from October 2027 under new legislation aimed at providing industry certainty and blocking bad actors. The move extends existing financial rules to crypto firms and aligns the UK more closely with the United States. We start with our top story of the day, and Australian officials have said the 24-year-old Bondi shooting suspect, Naveed Akram, the younger of the 2 alleged gunmen, had previously come to the attention of authorities but was not deemed a threat. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said that Akram was examined on the basis of being associated with others, but there was no indication of any ongoing threat of him engaging in violence. The head of the country's intelligence service, Australian Security Intelligence Organisation, had also earlier confirmed the man was previously on the agency's radar. Meanwhile, world leaders continue to pay their respects to the victims of the shooting. Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has said on a post on X that he has spoken to his Australian counterpart, Penny Wong, and conveyed India's condolences while offering fullest support. Further, Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, has confirmed that the United States is providing Australia with the requested assistance. Meanwhile, the president of the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies has condemned the incident as a massacre. Let's take a listen into the statement in full.
It was a massacre, a pogrom, here in our city, here at one of our most cherished landmarks, Bondi Beach. 16 precious lives taken for no reason, dozens hospitalized, children mowed down by gunfire, fathers and mothers being felled by bullets, the elderly having to take shelter behind trees. lives shattered irrevocably in a single moment. Young children who from this point forward will never have a father. Parents who have lost their beloved 10-year-old daughter. This is the moment we've arrived at. This isn't something we should ever have seen in Australia.
Well, Australia starts mourning today as flags fly at half-mast following yesterday's attack on the famous Bondi Beach after 15 people, including a 10-year-old girl, were killed during a Jewish event marking the first day of the Jewish festival of Hanukkah. The two suspects have been identified by police, a father and son. The father was deceased at the scene, however the son remains in custody. Police have said that the 24-year-old suspect, the son, remains in hospital. Erin Watson joins us now. She is the CEO of Baker and York. She joins us live from Melbourne, Australia. Thank you very much, Erin, for joining us here on the programme. Erin, of course, Australia wakes up mourning today, flags flying at half-mast. What more can you tell us about the general mood in the country following this attack? This, of course, comes just days after Australia was ranked the second safest country in the entire world. What's the feeling in Melbourne right now?
Yes, I mean, we live in Melbourne, so we are in a very different city to Sydney. But at the same time, I think that everybody here feels just as sad as people do up in Sydney and all around Australia as well. It's a reminder that despite how safe things are, despite our world-leading gun laws, which were reformed after the Port Arthur massacre, you know, we still have vulnerabilities that we need to address. And you know, obviously everyone's incredibly sad. I mean, I've been looking on social media today with my friendship network and the people I follow, and there is just an outpouring of grief for our Jewish friends. I think it's incredibly sad for them. I know people who were there, who were on the front line yesterday, one who was with one of the wives of someone who passed away. So it's incredibly sad, and I think there's a lot of disbelief because sometimes we do get a little bit complacent, I think, here. So it's a very, you know what, to sum it up, it's confusing and it's sad for everyone.
Indeed, of course. Anthony Albanese now is subject to criticism by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu says that Albanese didn't do enough to combat anti-Semitism in Australia. What are your thoughts on the statement from the Israeli Prime Minister there?
Look, I think that, you know, there'll be inherently political arguments made around this. We saw the opposition leader say something very similar today as well. There was a review into anti-Semitism in Australia. It has been on the rise in recent years, and many people feel like this is the result of, or a culmination of years of this rise in anti-Semitism, and therefore are looking to the government to say, well, you're here to protect us and you failed at that. And I think that that's a very valid criticism, and it's coming from a lot of people, not just Netanyahu, but the leader of the opposition here in Australia. It's coming from the general public as well. It's coming from the Jewish community. So I think that is a weak point for the Prime Minister at the moment, politically. So it'll be interesting to see what does happen. Look, there's going to be a cabinet meeting. My understanding now is that they're going to have a very, very quick, rapid look at gun laws in Australia. If you do remember back to the Port Arthur massacre, under John Howard's government, there was a huge amnesty of weapons in Australia and gun reform. That means that we do have shootings every now and then, right? Because you can own a gun, like the guys who committed this crime yesterday. They had a license and had 6 guns. So, but the point is that swift policy action, and I think that's something in Australia that we do quite well, and I think it's something we should be really proud of. So I think from that cabinet meeting, we're going to see some change. The question is, how quickly can they make that legislative change? So, you know, this is going to be a very decisive political moment, and those responses are going to be absolutely essential for the Australian public today.
Erin, do we know anything about what went wrong in regards to security lapses? Of course, Bondi Beach, it's a huge tourist destination, and the fact that two individuals can get firearms somewhere like that in such a densely populated area, does that not tell us about some serious breaches in security when it comes to Sydney's, Australia's most populous city?
Look, it's a good question, and I think we'll learn a lot about that throughout the investigation that will take place. I think it's an interesting question because, you know, one of the things about Australia is that, you know, at the front of my house, I have one door and I walk out into the street. I have one lock on my door, just so everyone knows I've got one lock. We don't really have that sort of posture of security that you see in many other places in the world. So you can just walk down to Bondi Beach. There's not a lot of security in terms of screening or anything like that because, you know, because of the gun reform that we had in the 1990s, that's something that, you know, we've been able to have this freedom, right? And that's why this is so decisive and it's such an important moment for Australia right now because it has happened. And it has happened at, you know, the fact that it happened at Bondi Beach says a lot as well, because what it means is not just attacking Jewish Australians and the Jewish community, it's attacking Australian values, and part of that is our freedom that we have here and this way of life that we have. So that's as much under attack as well. And that's why you choose to do this at a place like Bondi Beach. You have a really big Jewish community around there, so they knew exactly what they were doing. It was really calculated in terms of who they were attacking and where they were attacking, and then what that would mean for Australia.
Erin Watson, pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for taking the time. We now move on and over to Europe, and security experts say Ukraine's offer to abandon its bid to join NATO is unlikely to significantly shift the course of peace talks with Russia. This comes after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky signalled a major shift, offering to drop Ukraine's long-held ambition to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in exchange for strong, legally binding Western security guarantees. He stressed the need for US-backed Article 5-like protection and support from European allies, as well as partners such as Canada and Japan, to deter future Russian aggression. Analysts argue that NATO membership has remained unrealistic for years and describe the move as largely symbolic, though some call it a meaningful concession. The comments come as US envoy Steve Witkoff reported significant progress following high-stakes peace talks in Berlin. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held more than 5 hours of discussions with US officials, including Witkoff, with negotiations set to continue today as well. The talks in Berlin focus on a 20-point peace plan, economic issues and security arrangements. Joining us now is Shruti Dasgupta. She is an international affairs expert. She joins us live from New Delhi. Shruti, it's always a pleasure to talk to you here on NewsX World. Of course, Ukraine has given up its ambitions to join NATO, however, still wants security guarantees from the United States and Europe. Is this a serious concession, given that Article 5 is a huge sticking point for Moscow, and security guarantees here basically element to the same thing?
Greetings, Thomas. Thank you so much for inviting me. We've had this conversation before that Ukraine is unlikely to be able to join NATO at the way the Russian aggression has progressed and dominated the entire conversation. No matter what other analysts say, I've been very firm on this particular point. And now you see other analysts also come out. In fact, better minds than mine are now coinciding with this particular opinion, saying that it was very unlikely that it would get into NATO, specifically after a war with Russia. So this is significant as well as not. Significant not for the rest of NATO, because they probably had an idea they could not include a nation that is warring with Russia into NATO right after its war from Russia. So they knew this was not going to happen, and they would have to do bilateral concessions and agreements with Ukraine, and have grant it special status, or probably something very similar to Article 5 in their own particular way. Specifically, USA knew this, that they would have to offer it Article 5 level security guarantees so that it does not fear further Russian aggression once the peace is called. It is, so this was insignificant. People knew this, people in the power circles knew this. But it is significant for Ukraine because it is a hard line that was pressed forth by Zelensky himself to his people. This was what he promised to Ukrainians, that we will get into NATO even if we have to fight for it. Now, for him to publicly back off from it, that is a significant part of his concession. He is breaking his word to Ukrainians, the people who gave their lives for the chance to be part of NATO, for a chance to repel Russia, are now going to have to sign off on a peace deal where this NATO question is never going to be on the table.
Shruti, do stay with us as we move down to the ground. Russian air defences units destroyed a drone that was headed for the Russian capital of Moscow late yesterday. The mayor of Moscow has briefed the incident, saying that emergency crews have assessed the area where the drone hit the ground and examined its debris. As per sources, Ukrainian forces have been periodically sending drones towards Russia's capital. Just last week, some 40 drones were shot down over the Moscow region in a matter of few hours on one occasion. This latest incident of blocking drone attacks comes as Ukrainian president holds high-level discussions with US envoys and several European representatives in Berlin. After the meeting, Zelensky indicated that Kyiv is looking at a major shift and preparing to drop its long-held ambition of joining NATO. Okay, of course, Shruti, barrages of drones, aerial strikes continue cross-border as these diplomatic negotiations continue in the background. Do you think these escalation of both aerial attacks and on the battlefield, do you think that's a last grasp for territory, or do you think that as the war escalates, it's set to continue in the long run?
Well, this has been the standard practice both for Russia as well as Ukraine. Whenever there are peace talks happening, the attacks continue unabated. They try and inflict as much of psychological as well as physical damage on each other's region so that the peace talks are coming from point of power. So right now, Ukraine sending drones to Moscow shows that it has technology on its side and it can continue the war for a longer time. And it is kind of trying to push Putin to accept whatever level of those 20 points that are put forth, and whatever negotiations are now going to come forth after that 5-hour talk with Witkoff and Jared Kushner. So these are going to show us that this is a show of power from Ukraine. This is not an elongation of the war. This is not a defiance against the peace talks. This is just trying to project power, trying to showcase yourself that even though I've given up my NATO right to NATO membership clause, I am not as weak as you would want me to believe I am. So it's a kind of projection. And Putin is again, Russian agencies putting this news out that they've shot down all I believe that 40 drones was what they spoke about, that they've shot down all of 40. They show that their air defenses have evolved, and they're able to counter whatever he was able to throw at their face. So both of them are trying to showcase their defensive as well as attack maneuverability and performance, and try to show that none of them come as a weakened loser to the table of peace.
Shruti Dasgupta, as always, a pleasure to have you on the programme. Thank you very much for joining us. We now move over to the Indo-Pacific, and a Hong Kong court has found pro-democracy campaigner and media tycoon Jimmy Lai guilty under the China-imposed national security law, a verdict that could see the 78-year-old jailed for life. Lai was convicted of conspiracy to collude with foreign forces and to publish seditious material after pleading not guilty to all charges. The founder of now closed Apple Daily newspaper has already spent nearly 5 years in prison and will be sentenced at a later date. The ruling has drawn strong international reactions. Taiwan's government expressed deep regret over the conviction and strongly condemned what it called political persecution of freedom and human rights. Taipei urged Chinese and Hong Kong authorities to immediately release Lai, warning the verdict shows Hong Kong's freedom, democracy and judicial independence have been severely eroded. We now move over to the south of the continent, and India has emerged as the world's third most competitive country in artificial intelligence, ranking only behind the United States and China. This finding comes from Stanford University's Global AI Vibrancy Tool. The United States leads with a vibrancy score of 78.6, followed by China at 36.95. India scored 21.59, outperforming countries like the United Kingdom, Japan and Germany. India's high ranking is due to its strong engineering talent, growing AI research output and expanding startup ecosystem. The country also ranks among the top 3 globally in AI talent. India is the only lower middle income country in the top 3, highlighting its unique role in the global AI race. We're now joined by Prateek Singh. He's a tech analyst and software develop engineer. He joins us live from Bengaluru in India. Thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World, Prateek. India is ranked 3rd after the United States and China. Is this a real AI breakthrough or just strong talent numbers without enough deep innovation?
So, India's 3rd place ranking is definitely a real achievement. I have to agree with it. But it's not understood correctly. This is not a claim that India has overtaken US or China in breakthrough or AI intervention. But it is what that India has potential, and it showcases what India is capable of. Okay, what Stanford's ranking capture is ecosystem strength, talent, startups, research activity, adoption and policy momentum. On those fronts, India is genuinely strong. Okay, but especially in talent scale and usage. But when it comes to deep innovation, things like building frontier foundation models or defining new AI architectures, India is still trailing the top 2. So I think this is a really good achievement that India is ranked number 3, but this is not the end line. We have to move further and further.
Yeah, and where is India actually leading in AI today? Real products and models, or mostly applications built on foreign platforms?
So right now, India's real strength lies in AI applications rather than core platforms. So Indian companies are exceptionally good at using AI to solve real-world problems. So we are using AI in fintech, we are using AI in healthcare, language translation, customer service, and whatnot. But most of this is built on foreign foundational models. So even in major companies, the models that are being used are the models from US or China only, mostly from US. India has very few globally dominant AI models, so that can compete with China or US. So we have to work in that regard. But that doesn't reduce India's importance, adoption, and impact matter. But it means India has the tendency to do more.
Yes, thank you very much, Prateek, for joining us here on NewsX World. It's been a pleasure to have you on the programme. We now move on to our next story. Apologies, that's all we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates.